3 miles inland from the river is a place that's very close to my heart. The legendary Valley of the Kings. It was the fabulous treasures hidden beneath these barren slopes that first sparked my interest in history, way back when I was 5. And one discovery here sits above all others. It was made by 2 Brits, archaeologist Howard Carter and wealthy aristocrat Lord Carnarvon. Carnarvon and Carter had actually worked together for 15 years before they discovered the tomb of Tutankhamun. Carnarvon was really passionate about what he did in Egypt. I mean, he loved being here. He learned some Arabic, the locals called him Lordy, and he wrote that he drank thick black Turkish coffee every morning. But he also poured money into these excavations. At one point, he was hiring up to 275 boys to do the work. So the 2 of them were really, really serious about trying to find something. And once they did, it was the discovery of the century and captured the imagination of the world. In the heat and dust, you really get a sense of what it must have been like digging here 100 years ago, as Carter and his team searched for a long-lost tomb. After 5 years of hard work, on the 26th of November 1922, Carter and Carnarvon scrambled down this very passageway. It's a story that's been told a number of times, but it is always worth the retelling. When Carnarvon and Carter were about to break into the chamber, Carter looked through a tiny hole and describes the glint of gold everywhere. "What can you see?" said Carnarvon, and Carter simply said, "Wonderful things." Tut's tomb stunned the world, and it's been drawing crowds ever since. I just went to that Tutankhamun exhibition in 1972. It was one at the British Museum. And that's what got me into history. So it's really lovely to see. But the truth is, Tut's tomb isn't actually that remarkable. It's surprisingly small for a pharaoh, and the decoration looks a bit rushed, even in some places a bit second-rate.
We're saying it's so much smaller than obviously the bigger tombs. We've just been in Ramesses III.
Yes.
And obviously it goes down and down and down and down, and then you come into this, and it's just compact.
Yeah.
But I guess it was because it was a rushed burial.
Exactly. Yeah. It's now believed that Tut was buried in a tomb originally prepared for someone else. Perhaps Tut's own tomb wasn't ready. That would make sense, because we know he died when he was just a teenager. Worth the effort coming in?
Yeah. Definitely. Definitely for me.
And the boys?
Boys. Well, they're boys, aren't they?
Luckily for those who need a bit more convincing, the Valley of the Kings also boasts the most spectacular tombs in Egypt. And just a few metres away, there is an absolute showstopper. KV9 stands for Kings Valley Number 9, a pretty unassuming name for an absolutely jaw-dropping site. It's 5 times the size of Tut's and instantly more impressive. So this is what a royal tomb really should look like. It stretches over 100 metres deep into the rock. The walls are covered with images and ideas and stories that are supposed to guarantee the successful journey of the pharaoh through the underworld and on into the afterlife.
Several images show that journey being made on a flat-bottomed Nile boat. KP9 is, for me, the high point of over 1,000 years' worth of Egyptian tomb building. The 3,000-year-old decoration looks as though it was painted yesterday. But look a bit closer, and you'll see something that shouldn't be there. Graffiti in Latin and Greek. Some of it dates back at least 2,000 years. People have been coming here for centuries, some just to visit, but others to loot.
Tombs like these were protected with curses. May death come on wings to he who enters the tomb of the pharaoh. But there were some who clearly took no heed of that warning here. Within just 20 years, the tomb was robbed. This massive stone sarcophagus was smashed, and the mummy inside was desecrated with an axe, and all the treasure was stolen.
The world's most famous cemetery is also a crime scene.
All the tombs discovered here in the valley so far have turned out to be robbed. But the truth is, this isn't just random looters. Quite often it's the men who built the tombs themselves, or it was an officially sanctioned robbery, so it's one pharaoh getting their own back on another. This was a pretty risky business, though. In ancient Egypt, the death penalty wasn't actually used that much, but you could be killed for robbing a tomb. And the manner of death was pretty horrific. You are either impaled or burnt alive.
It wasn't just the rich who were fascinated by both life and death. Almost 2 miles across the hills from the Valley of the Kings is a remarkable and very different site. Deir el-Medina, a village that was home to the workers who built the pharaoh's tombs. I've been given incredibly privileged access to one place in the village that's only just been opened after years of restoration. It belonged to a man guilty of much more than simply skiving off work.
Oh, amazing. This is brilliant. This is what I was looking for. So this is the tomb of someone called Paneb. I think that's Paneb, and that's almost certainly his wife behind him. And there's Anubis, representing the god of the underworld.
Paneb wasn't royalty, so his tomb is much smaller than the ones in the Valley of the Kings. But even though he wasn't famous, we still know an amazing amount about him thanks to evidence discovered in the village. And the story it tells is shocking.
Paneb stops being an ordinary worker and elevates himself somehow to become a chief workman. Then the plot thickens. One of the labourers accuses Paneb of stealing building material from a royal tomb to construct his new burial place. Not only that, but there are 16 other charges levelled against him, and this is really serious stuff. So he's accused of adultery, of sexual abuse of the women in the village, of falling into kind of drunken rages so that he's incredibly violent, and even of killing someone to cover up his crimes.
Now, we don't know what happened in the end to Paneb, but for me, what's so brilliant is that we've still got these intimate details of ordinary Egyptians' lives. Their affairs, their intrigues, the bullying, the social climbing, and the scandal. Perched at the foot of the hills, looking back across the Nile, is an awe-inspiring monument. This stunning temple can be busy with tourists, but get here just after dawn and you can have the place to yourself. This was the crowning glory of one of my all-time heroines, the female pharaoh Hatshepsut. A remarkable ruler, and brilliantly, a woman ruling in a man's world.
So here's lovely Hatshepsut. Now the thing is, of course, at first glance, she looks like any other male pharaoh. She's got her king's skirt and even a little pharaonic beard. But we know this is definitely Hatshepsut because that's her name in the cartouche up there. But isn't it fascinating that despite all her progress and pioneering ideas and power, this amazingly potent female pharaoh had to be represented as a man?
In ancient Egypt, men inherited the throne. In fact, there wasn't even a word for queen. So when Hatshepsut found herself in charge after her husband's early death, she realised the only way to rule Egypt was to be better than any king.
You get the sense that she wanted to outdo any man. This temple, for example, was unlike anything that Egypt had ever seen before. Its design was very progressive and internationalist, and this whole complex would have looked completely different. It would have been a riot of colour. There were ponds and lines of incense trees. It's almost as if Hatshepsut was trying to seduce her people with her sophistication.
The temple walls tell us more about this intriguing woman. She sent delegations out across the seas to get incense and ivory and gold from places other Egyptian rulers hadn't managed to reach.
And the point of all of this wasn't to prove what the Egyptians traded in, but that Hatshepsut could make it happen. He seems to be
Archaeologist Dr. Zbigniew Szafranski has arranged for me to see a part of the temple that's usually off limits, and that gives us intimate insight to this remarkable woman's life that goes way beyond the official line.
Hatshepsut was a volcano of ideas in political, military and religious fields. She was really brilliant, I may say.
So do you think she is one of the reasons that ancient Egyptian civilization became so great?
Yes. We know a lot about Cleopatra, for example. But in my opinion, Hatshepsut was really more clever. She was one of the greatest person in the history of the world at the time.
But Hatshepsut had a secret. It seems she had a bit of a soft spot for one of her courtiers.
He seems to be present everywhere.
Yes.
So can you show me where he is here?
Look.
Oh gosh, yes.
This is Senenmut, not a member of the royal family, and yet beautifully depicted all over the Queen of Egypt's temple.
Because he's just a commoner, and they don't normally get represented in a place as sacred as this. That says something about him.
Yes. He was a very gifted person, a very talented person.
Senenmut oversaw the temple's construction and tutored Hatshepsut's daughter. It's long believed that his talents captured the Queen's attention, and perhaps even her heart.
Presumably, because if the niches were always closed with doors, so that image would have been hidden, wouldn't it?
Yes. The door of the niche was open inside, so nobody knew about his presence inside the holy place.
By hiding him behind closed doors, maybe Hatshepsut was trying to keep her relationship with Senenmut under wraps. But as the most famous woman in Egypt at the time, it can't have been easy keeping a lid on a juicy bit of gossip like this.